This is Xi Jinping. I hope I'm saying his name right. Xi Jinping. He is the leader of China, or the cosmetic leader of China, the representative of the people in the place called China. And we're going to talk about his facial expressions and gestures. Now, there's billions of people in China. And so there has to be a certain uniformity that people engage in order to keep order. So this won't be a criticism of communism or socialism or China or anything Chinese. We're just going to talk about this particular person. Now, when you look at this person, I can tell he's very ambitious. I can tell he's very ambitious for many reasons just by looking at this picture. His hair is extremely primped, put together. Looks like he might have put something in it to make it stay like that. Because he's outside, it appears, and there would be wind. And so it wouldn't quite look like this. He also probably gets his hair cut pretty frequently. I mean, he's supposed to be the prime minister, president, whatever they call it. Now, I don't know if he's reading, so it's hard to really judge his eyes. But they look focused on something, so I'm not going to say anything about that in this particular picture. Now, he's wearing a Western suit and tie. The West is responsible for what we call civilization in modern times, for the most part. A lot of people would really not like me saying that because they'll say, oh, everybody was civilized. I don't think civilization is a great thing. If you watched my video breakdown of what is civilization. So one of the primary characteristics of civilization is ambition, because civilization is trying to be the most recent, most advanced thing. Go back to the civilization video to get an explanation. So this person is very ambitious. He's standing in front of a mic. His hair is primped. He's a shaved what I call him, hairless cats. He shaves his face every day. I don't think I've ever seen him with any facial hair. I can't remember these pictures, but he shaves his face every day, probably to appear more feminine than he really is, to appear clean, as they would say. They think nature is unclean, so they shave all the hair that grows all over their faces. Talking about people globally. It's a very strange behavior. So I don't want to, linger on this picture too much, but that's what I get from this. Can't see what he's doing with his hands. He seems like the type of person that may not speak with his hands too much because it would give away too much. I can tell just from this picture, once again, another reason why I think he's ambitious is that he has a great poker face. You're not going to see or hear what Xi Jinping is thinking in his voice or in his appearance. Unless you're me, then you can, but everybody else can. I'm sorry, I'm cocky. I think this picture might have just proven me wrong a little bit. Goodness. To a certain degree. Okay, so he's indoors now. He's got a Western suit on again. He always looks very well put together. But you can see a little bit more in his expression in this photo. He seems to be a bit frustrated. And I think that's because in this previous photo, he might have been, it looks like he's answering a question here too. He might be reading. He looks like he might be reading. But here he's listening to someone, I think, speak to him and ask him a question. Still pretty good poker face. He's not moving his hands. He's not really expressing much. He's overweight. He doesn't want to appear that way because he's the president. And so he's wearing a baggy jacket that makes him look as if he's smaller than he really is, but I think he's quite overweight. And he's hiding it with his hands too. Doing that with your hands makes your upper body seem a little slimmer. And it also gives you something to do with your hands so you're not moving them around and stuff. And it makes you seem peaceful. But if you look at his face, he's not peaceful. He's an extremely aggressive, calculating, ambitious man, like all so-called presidents, prime ministers are, but he really hides it. It's a nice tie. Even when he's smiling, it's always the same look. He's got a little soft smile here. I like that tie too. He wears nice ties. That's a beautiful chair too. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at this stuff. I really like the way Asian people put things together as far as like furniture and flower arrangements and stuff. It's beautiful. Paintings. But you can see he's overweight here. He wears a lot of Western suits, except for when he's trying to appeal to a certain ancient structure or something, an ancient cultural thing. He'll wear traditional Chinese clothing. Somewhat traditional, not necessarily traditional. I don't think he ever wears traditional Chinese clothing. I think he's a little younger here. He is a representation of what he thinks and what whoever is really in charge, or whoever the group is that's really in charge of these things, thinks about people and what they should be like. He's a representation of a quote-unquote man. Now, this is the former president, prime minister of Japan, I believe. And I believe he was assassinated last year. I see a lot here, but we won't talk about that because the video is not about him. We will talk about, we'll have a brief little side note here to talk about these two nations and these two people. Now, they don't appear as if they really want to be talking to each other at all. Now, during World War II, Japan was not very happy with the rest of Asia, pretty much, because they were allowing the West to come over and just set up everything. I think to Japan, they didn't think that the other Asian countries had a lot of pride, had a lot of autonomy, and so they just treated them with a lot of disregard, disrespect even. I wouldn't say that, but I understand the viewpoint that would be. But it kind of backfired on them. And so there's a bitterness between these two groups of people, Chinese and Japanese and a lot of people in that part of the world in general, because of different aggressions that they've taken throughout time, not just in World War II, but throughout time. So they don't really want to be talking to each other. I'm not sure what meeting this is. I'm sure this is just about finances and corporate stuff, but even here, his demeanor, his display of how he thinks and feels is very limited. They both got on Western suits. This is what he looks like when he's listening to something. I mean, this is really, to a certain degree, I think this is something to aspire to be this controlled and measured. There's a perpetual sadness that's always in his eyes. He regrets. He does have some spirit left in him, and he regrets having to be this way, but not enough to stop being so ambitious. I mean, I know a lot of people like this. None of them being Chinese. Actually, a couple of them are Chinese. But hey, that's what he looks like when he's listening to something. I can see why him and Vladimir Putin would get along. I mean, they have a very, very similar vibe, demeanor, temperament to them. Hey, that's him as a young man. There's some life in his eyes. There's a little bit more of a sincerity. You see he's wearing his hair more naturally and not so perfect. This person probably will be a little more interesting to have a conversation with because I don't see the ambition there. And this is why I think that this person was asked, invited to be this, to be in charge, to be the representative, rather than actually wanting to do that. In the same way that Martin Luther King was. A lot of times, people that are placed in charge of things are placed there not against their will, but or not against their wishes or their will, but because of something that someone who was really in charge saw in them. And I can see that this person is very susceptible, accepting of direction, and able to focus. Look at that. Just a regular guy. Now, this is a stance that you won't see this person making, I don't think, in this day. It's too casual. The most casual you'll see from this person is this. And this is still quite an aggressive posture compared to, compared to the younger days. You're not going to see him making this little smile. Handsome young man, look at that. You won't see him standing like this. And even though you can't really see his eyes because the picture is kind of grainy and old, there's life. You can see that there's life. There's a bit of individuality. He's a bit uncertain. He's a little bit older here. I think that's him. It's hard to tell sometimes young people from when they're 50 years aged, but I believe that's him. And they're doing some kind of work for some reason. I don't know. But he's not just tired, he's completely unsure and uncertain about himself. And he sees the camera there, but he's not looking at it. This is a cool photo. He always has the same hairstyle, same Western suit. Uniformity, same face. Now, this gesture in the West means something else, so it's kind of funny to see him doing it. But I imagine he's trying to display strength. Now, this looks like this may be the beginning of this stoic, hard-faced temperament. He looks still fairly young, you know. But you'll see the difference between that photo and this one. I mean, look at his hair. Look at this. What's the difference between this and this? Now, here it looks like he's telling people to be seated or something like that. And he's got incredibly short arms and short fingers. Not sure what's up with that. But, yeah, nothing to see here. Here he looks like a mob boss. He's taking his tie off, which he seems to rarely do. I'm not sure what the occasion is that he's taking his tie off. But it takes away a lot from the uniformity. This may be kind of a cry out of individuality. You know, it's like an expression of I'm not always the same. Now, who knows whether this happened because he ripped the tie off in the middle of the press conference or meeting or whatever because he was hot, or whether he came in there and he'd already taken it off. But I'm sure everyone that was there noticed. I don't know what that pin is, but I'm sure it means something. This is about as relaxed as you'll see him. Now, if this is such a different place than the West, which is what is always implied, why are they all wearing Western suits? Why is the military guy here and here? Why are they both wearing military suits designed in the West? This is not the way traditional military dresses in China. So this is a very recent advancement in the last, couple hundred years. And it says everything when your men dress like they're from a place that's supposedly your enemy. It doesn't make sense. And here he is in the middle. You see? Okay, so I believe that's his wife. Now, I haven't seen but one picture with her here now. I think I might have downloaded a couple. But he has a little bit more softness in his face with his wife. Now, she reminds me very much of the woman that Vladimir Putin was with, in that she's kind of oblivious. She knows her position and her job and her relation to him and her duty, and she pretty much finds it very easy. But I don't want to analyze her. But you can see there's a little bit more of a genuine expression on his face. Let's see what the other photos with her look like. Uh-oh. It looks like he's just like most men, where he's scared of his wife and he adores her. I bet that he likes more of a submissive position with her. Now, because he's so ambitious, it's incredibly important to him, that she is a certain way in public. Gotta behave a certain way, dress a certain way. See how she's gripping his shirt. Now that grip, that's a pretty hard grip. Now they are walking down some stairs, but she's gripping him hard. I don't know if he's making that face because she's hurting him, or because they had a dispute in the plane. Looks like they're getting off a plane, or what reason. But her presence seems to affect him very deeply. Because this is another, he seems a little bit more insecure in this photo than others. Seems defeated almost. So she can control his emotions probably very easily with a matter of words, looks, gestures. And I may have to do a video on her because she seems quite the powerful woman. And she reminds me a little bit of Putin's wife, but a little bit more, well, a lot more calculating and aggressive. Let's see if I have any other photos here. Oh, that's the last one. So like I said, yeah, we may have to do a video on her. I'm not sure her name or anything, but she seems interesting. That's a crazy look. All right. Have a great day.